It's not working properly. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here, ready for our International Coffee Break session number 2 of the year. The English program and International Relations Office from Adolfo Ibáñez University want to give you the warmest welcome to this event. The International Coffee Break series is an invitation and an opportunity to engage in conversation with international speakers and, at the same time, put our English into practice. Today is NASA Day. We especially welcome our students and speakers who join us from the United States.
We are proud to have many students planning this event. I'm very excited because today we have students from Santiago and Viña. We welcome from Santiago, Valentina and Daniela, and from Viña del Mar, Vicente and myself, Fernanda. To warm up, we invite you to go to menti.com by clicking the link we have just sent in the chat box, or that we will send in the chat box, and enter the code you see on the screen. Now, type a word or a phrase to answer this question. Can you think of any challenge that space travel might represent for NASA missions? Carol will guide us through the activity.
Thank you very much, Fernanda. Okay, so this is probably not an easy to answer question, especially because there's a lot of unknown things about space itself, but we'll get back to it at the end of today's talk. Okay, so please make sure you follow the instructions correctly. You have to click on the link that I sent you in the chat and answer, or at least try to answer this question. And we'll have more insights on the topic after the talk. There we go. So we're seeing your insights: space junk, money, adventure, human intervention, climate change, fuel, crisis, material resistance, radiation. The bigger the concept or the word gets, it means more people are typing the same concept. So we have like a lot of technology, time, radiation. Excellent. Okay. So now, after this feedback, Vicente will introduce our guest.
Hi everybody, welcome. Our university, in partnership with Haas Space School, want to welcome all of you. Each year, students from our university have the exclusive opportunity to learn from the best from NASA about space exploration at Houston, USA. Today, thanks to this partnership, we are pleased to introduce Dr. Liz Warren. Liz is a senior program director of the International Space Station. Her role in the International Space Station Program Office is to communicate research results and benefits both internally to NASA and externally to the public. She's an expert on the effects of spaceflight on the human body and has authored publications ranging from artificial gravity protocols to neuroscience to energy balance and metabolism. Hi, Liz. How are you doing?
Hello, everyone. I'm doing great. I hope you are all doing well tonight as well. And I'm very excited to talk to you. Vicente, should I just share my slides and begin? All right.
Sure.
Okay. See if this works. Okay, can you guys see the slides?
Working well.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right in and tell you all that you can make your dreams come true. You can do anything that you choose to do. And I'm going to tell you about space, and that's something that I wanted to be a part of, and it's a very exciting thing to be a part of. But everything I say today is really applicable to whatever field of research, whatever ideas you want to do in your career. So it's all applicable. And it started, you know, when we're children and we are in school. It matters what your teachers say to you, what your parents say to you, what your community says to you. And as you all know now, sometimes there are challenges that come across us in our lifetime. And even when we're young children, we can have some hardships and some challenges. And the important thing is to not let those things define you. The important thing is to let challenges help form who you are. And there's some very important lessons to be learned from challenges. The picture here, I'm in my seventh grade. So that's, I'm about 12 years old. And I decided that I really, really wanted to help astronauts keep their bones strong, because I'll tell you a little bit later, when astronauts go to space, they lose strength in their bones. And I was very interested in that. And by the time I finished high school, I knew that I was going to go work at NASA. This was what I wanted to go do. And so this is kind of the career path that I chose. And it was not always easy. There are sometimes, you know, challenges, but it's very important to learn how to be persistent. Some other important things to learn are how to work in a team. So who here has been assigned to work in a team and did not like working in a team? This was me. I was very often put in a group of people, and I always felt like I had to do the most work. I felt like someone else wasn't doing all of their.
Hola, buenas.
And it was really hard to learn that no matter what, being in a team is stronger than working alone. And so this was something that I had to learn. But now that I've learned that lesson, it's a strong one. I know that the more diverse that the team is, the more different experiences, the better. I've also had an opportunity to lead a team, and I know that it is one of the most important challenges of leadership is knowing how to be a good follower. And so I did some training. I worked in mission control and led a team, and I made mistakes. I guarantee that I made mistakes, but my team helped me to be a better leader by telling me when I made mistakes, but being supportive and using it as a learning opportunity. So this was also very important things for me to learn. I had an opportunity to live in we call it a spaceflight analog. It was a mission in what kind of looks like a spaceship, but it was on the Earth. It didn't go anywhere, but we pretended like we were traveling to an asteroid. And we lived together in that habitat with a small team. And it was a lot of fun. We got to work through challenges together, work through basically a fake space mission. And it was a lot of fun. And it was right here at NASA. And we did all kinds of tests. And the purpose of the whole mission was for scientists to test out some of the research before sending it to the space station. They wanted the questions they were asking were logical and that they could actually get answers when they send it to space. And so this was kind of a test ground for research before it went to space. I've also had a wonderful opportunity to fly in an aircraft called the Weightless Wonder. We also call it the Vomit Comet because it has a tendency to make you not feel so good. But this was an incredible opportunity to float or to fly. And we did some testing. I ran on a treadmill with some markers on my body. You can see maybe a couple of little glowing balls. Anyone who's into mechanical engineering, you can, maybe this is like motion capture. So we were able to assess how I ran and how that was different in space. And that would help us with some physiological testing that I'll tell you about later. And also working at NASA and having some of these opportunities is just fun. I got to wear spacesuits and undergo some testing. So I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space, but I would like to go to space. And these are some of the things I've been able to do, been able to travel, been able to talk about NASA, been able to talk about research. Even talking to you today is really kind of it's an honor for me to be able to tell you about NASA. And I also have hobbies. Everyone has something that they like to do outside of work. I play the drums. I like to go on hikes. I like to snorkel and scuba. I like to travel, and I've been to Costa Rica a number of times because I really like sloths. And I worked at a small animal rehabilitation clinic taking care of sloths. So that was really fun. Okay, here's the part that you should pay attention to. I'm going to give you top 10 lessons in leadership, lessons that I've learned. These are things that you can take from NASA and bring them to school, bring them to wherever you bring them home, bring them to wherever you're going to go work. Number 1, never be done learning. Life is much more fun if you continue to learn, and you will develop as a person. You'll become a more rich person with knowledge. 2, be driven by passion. Follow your heart. If there is something you want to do, if there is something interesting to you, try to do that thing. You'll be better at it. You'll enjoy your work more, and you'll surround yourself with people that have like passions and like minds. And so it's important to follow your heart. 3, work hard no matter what. Sometimes you'll be in a class that you don't like. Sometimes you'll have a job that you don't really like. Sometimes you'll be in a situation that is just not something that makes you happy. It is important to do your best in all situations because you will grow, but also because you just never know who you are working with and how that will impact you later on. You may be working for a boss that you don't like, and so you don't really work very hard. And you may plan to get a new job anyways, but holy cow, you never know. Like maybe that person will be your boss next time too. So it's important to work hard no matter what. Next, watch for opportunities. They say that there's no such thing as luck, or that luck favors the people that are prepared. Keep your eyes open for things, for new opportunities, for travel, for education, for coffee breaks like this, for opportunities to interact with new people, to learn new things. If you just sit at home and don't open your eyes to new things, you won't have a rich life. look out for new opportunities. Next, be courageous. Oftentimes in my own career, in your career, there will be times where you'll be a little intimidated, or you'll be a little afraid to say something or do something. It takes courage to grow. It takes courage to challenge someone else. It takes courage to find a mistake and point out a mistake. So being courageous is important. Don't take no for an answer. So this is not a very polite thing, right? If someone tells you no, you should understand them and hear them and take no for an answer. But in work, in an environment where you want to take a class or you want to do something and someone says, no, this is not for you, I say, don't necessarily listen to them. I say, maybe ask again, maybe ask someone else, or maybe find another way to get what you desire. So yeah, there's been a number of times when I've applied for a job, for example, or an opportunity, and I didn't get it. And what I did is I said, well, why? I'd ask the question, well, why didn't I get this job? Why didn't I get this opportunity? Is there another similar opportunity? And if you express yourself, and if you let people know what you're trying to do, oftentimes it will work out for you. Communication skills are vital. It is important in your career to be able to communicate. As you know, engineers have to be able to communicate to scientists. Scientists have to be able to communicate to engineers. If you have good ideas, but you can't communicate them to somebody else, you're not going to get very far with your ideas. So it is important to develop speaking skills, writing skills, just general communication skills. And guess what? This is important at home too. You have to be able to communicate with your family. Which brings me to people are your greatest assets. And this can be your teammates, or it can be your family, or it can be your friends. And I have learned recently, just in the past couple of years of this COVID pandemic, that having a support team, having my tribe, if you will, people that are not necessarily with me, but they surround me and they support me. And I have a group of friends that I really trust, and I can come to them with things that are bothering me. I can come to them with things I don't know how to deal with, and they will help me figure out the right answer. So have people around you that you love and trust. Integrity is essential. Integrity is very simply doing the right thing even when nobody is looking. It's just be a good person. And then finally, this is a question. How will you deal with obstacles? Because they will happen in your life. I guarantee it. And how you react when you are given a challenge. This is really important. You can decide to have a setback and be upset, or you can choose to take it, learn from it, and consider it an opportunity. Resilience is a very important word. We've all developed new resilience skills in the COVID pandemic. It's the ability to get back up when you fall down. And I fully admit sometimes I am not very resilient, but I try to be. Okay. Let's see. We're going to shift gears now and talk about space, which is what we're here to learn about. So the low Earth orbit environment, the environment of space that is near Earth, has some very unique characteristics. Have you ever heard of microgravity? when we say 0G or zero gravity, that's a misnomer. There's no such thing. So microgravity is really the terminology that we use. There's also, you're outside of Earth's atmosphere. Earth's atmosphere gives us air to breathe. It gives us temperature regulation. It gives us pressure, gives us some shielding from the harshness of space. Also, if we are talking about low Earth orbit, we're in the range of being able to be hit by micrometeorites and space debris. I saw some people mention one of the challenges of space is space debris. When I say microgravity, what I am talking about is the lack of forces. Very basic things change in science. Convection, buoyancy, sedimentation, they're very different in a lack of gravity. For example, a candle flame on the far left there. This is what a flame looks like. We're used to seeing this, but it's because of gravity. If you remove gravity, the fire looks more like a sphere. That's because there's no heat rising. Buoyancy. Fluid does not move like it normally moves on Earth. The movement of water is different. Sedimentation. Nothing settles to the bottom of a test tube or a dish. This includes density. There's no density-driven convection. That also is kind of related to the hot air rising and the cold air sinking. None of that applies in microgravity. So it's a totally new place to do science. My specialty is physiology in space. It's really the study of how the human body works. It's like system engineering for the human body. So does physiology change in space? Absolutely. So let's all pretend like we have gone to space and we're living in space in a giant spaceship together. You've heard about some of the changes that might happen in our body. You may have heard of bone loss. You may have heard that astronauts' bones and muscles get weaker, but there's more than that. The heart gets weaker. The cardiovascular system gets weaker. The immune system gets a little bit weaker and doesn't do its normal thing. There's radiation, and that may have an effect on our body's ability to fight infection. There's a fluid shift that I'll tell you about as well. All kinds of changes happen in the human body. And this graph is busy, so don't worry too much about it, but it all happens at different time courses. Some of these changes start right away. Others of them take a little longer to develop. Real quickly, let's talk about the heart and the cardiovascular adaptations to spaceflight. All of the fluids in our body are going to kind of move upward into our upper body. It's because normally on Earth, our body is really well adapted to push fluid upward against gravity. But without gravity, all that fluid, it still moves up and it causes some issues. Everyone looks a little bit different in space. So this is astronaut Peggy Whitson on the ground on Earth. She looks a little different in space, right? Her face looks a little different. Her eyes look a little bit different. All the fluids in her body have migrated, have moved up to her upper body. That's going to happen to all of us too. Does anyone have like younger brothers or sisters at home that maybe you can do some science experiments on? Here's an idea. Take your cell phone, take a picture, then lie down for about 10 minutes with your legs up. This is not very comfortable. If you're doing this with your younger brother or sister, they're going to complain. It's okay, just make them stay there. And then after about 10 minutes, take another picture. They'll look different too. All of the fluids in their body are now going to be up in their upper body. So this is a fluid shift experiment. And this is basically what you will look like in space. Our bones are not dead tissue. There's a lot of living cells in our bones, and they get a little out of balance. The cells that normally build bone are a little less active, and the cells that break down bone get a little more active. And so you get an imbalance of these cells, and so you end up losing more bone than building. And that's not good, because then you might break a bone. So it's a little bit like osteoporosis here on Earth. It's not a good disease to have. And an interesting thing is the bones that lose the most strength and lose the most mass are the bones that normally do a lot of heavy lifting and loading. So the arm does not lose much mass, but the parts that do lose a lot of mass are the hip, the part of your bones that are like right in your hip socket, your pelvis, your spine. So bones that are used to a lot of load get weaker. Your muscles also get weaker. You get a little bit skinny, you get a little bit scrawny, and you shift from postural slow muscle to shifting to kind of the high twitch fast muscle. And I'll show you how we prevent this. We've got to stay strong in space. I'll show you how we do that in a second. I mentioned radiation earlier, and I saw that someone mentioned or wrote radiation as a challenge to being in space. Absolutely. We're concerned about radiation because it damages DNA. And if you have damaged DNA, that can result in cancer. We don't like that. So this is a challenge that we don't really have a good answer for yet. It's a little bit scary. There's also a tendency to not feel very good the first couple of days when you're in space. We don't fully understand it, but your inner ear, it's like going on a roller coaster and you don't really know which way is up, and the roller coaster doesn't stop. So there's a tendency to feel a little bit sick for the first couple of days you're in space. And this is also true when we get back to Earth. That's not really too big of a deal, but it could be if you really feel sick. And then I mentioned earlier, immune dysfunction. Our immune system keeps us healthy, but if your immune system acts funny, you may have impaired wound healing. You may have a tendency to get sick. So we don't want that when we go to Mars, for example. We want to be able to be healthy and not sick. One more interesting thing that we see in space is that our eyes, in a lot of people, actually this number is wrong, it's not 20%, it's like 70% of astronauts have some vision changes for the worse in space. And we're not really sure what causes this, but we think part of it might be that fluid shift I told you about, kind of pushing against the eyeballs, changing the shape, changing the retina of astronauts in space. The good thing is when we get back down to Earth, for the most part, that goes away. So very important. How do we keep astronauts healthy in space? I just told you all kinds of horrible things that happen when we're in space. How are we going to stay healthy? Exercise is just like on Earth, right? We have to exercise. The exercise equipment looks a little bit different. We have this treadmill. You have to be held down to the treadmill with these bungee cords and a harness. We have, this is a stationary bike here on the lower left. It's interesting because there's actually no seat. You don't need to sit down on it. And then this lower right image is our weightlifting machine. Also a misnomer. You can't lift weights in space. Weight nothing weighs anything. So what we do is it's like a bunch of rubber bands, and you stretch against a coiled force. So it's resistance exercise. And this is critical. All of these things are really critical to keeping the body healthy. Just like on Earth, so is nutrition. We don't get a lot of fresh food in space, especially like on a mission to Mars. How are we going to feed people? Much of the food is prepackaged in foil packages, meal. It's like a military meal ready to eat. It tastes okay. I've tried a lot of different space food, but we don't get a lot of fresh food. And so that is a little bit of a challenge, especially for Mars. What about psychological support? Being isolated and away from our family is going to affect us. It's hard. We've all maybe learned that this last couple of years of the COVID pandemic. How do we, again, resilience? How do we be resilient when we're not able to be with our family, we're away from our spouse or our children? We've learned that on the space station, it's very important to have good team dynamics, protected sleep time. We've learned that it's important to have weekly conferences via video with family, and some hobbies, playing guitar or sewing, just things that make us feel more at home. Everyone always asks, what are the differences between men and women in space? There's a lot of words on this slide, but essentially, there's no difference. There's some small differences here and there, but nothing of note. And what that means to NASA is it doesn't matter if we send men or women to space. We still have to keep them healthy with exercise and nutrition, but it doesn't really matter. And that's kind of a nice thing. I want to leave plenty of time for questions. So I wanted to help you understand, if you want to work in space, how many different jobs are actually available. You don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be an engineer, although of course I advocate for STEM careers. But there are all kinds of people that work in space. There's accountants, there's weather people, there's psychologists, there's people that do robotics, there's people that manage teams, there are people that work in communications and media, there's lawyers, there's photographers, there's artists, there's poets. Every job that you can think of probably has a space in space, which is kind of nice. And then I know I went kind of quickly, but I wanted to make sure that you guys had a chance to ask questions and interact with me. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I want to see if you guys have questions. And maybe it's best to type them in, or maybe it's best for Vicente or somebody to help coordinate questions.
I think Dani and Vale are ready for that, right?
So I see a question already.
Yes. Thank you, Liz, so very much for your brilliant talk. It was so interesting. And now, like you said, we'd like to give the audience the opportunity to ask you some questions. So if you have one, please raise your hand. And it's very important to be brief for your question, so everyone gets a chance to participate and ask Liz as many questions as we can. So, Francisco here asked if you could simulate gravity on the spaceships.
Yes. So this is a topic that is near and dear to me because I like gravity. I like floating a lot, but I think that when we go to Mars, it might be a good idea. We have to bring food, we have to bring air, we have to bring water. Maybe we should bring some gravity too. So yes, we can simulate gravity on a spaceship through something called centrifugal force. It's spinning around quickly, and you can generate a force that is like gravity. It might make you dizzy, is the only problem, but we do this with a lot of experiments on the space station now, small, of course. So we maybe have some cells that we want to study, but we want to control in 1G, or 1 gravity. So we have a small centrifuge to spin the cells or plants to make artificial gravity. And so, yeah, we can do it, but it's hard technically on a large scale because of the engineering challenge of building a spaceship that can do that. So it's hard to do, but yes, it is possible.
Thank you. Marianne?
Yes, I wanted to ask, how did you get the opportunity to work at NASA? Like, how did you get there?
Okay, and I think maybe someone else asked that too, Isadora. So I did not get an internship. A lot of people do internships. The way I got a job at NASA is it's part of my advice to you is I made my intentions known. That is, I made sure that everybody I talked to knew that I wanted to work at NASA. And when I was at university, I told my professors, I want to work at NASA. How do I do that? Can you help me? Because I did not know how to get a job at NASA. And one of my professors knew somebody at NASA. And so my professor introduced me to somebody at NASA. And I met people at NASA, and I just applied for jobs. And I didn't get all of them. I didn't get the first job I applied for, but I eventually, through persistence, got a job at NASA. And that's, kind of my lesson to you guys is twofold there. If you have a passion for something and you know that there's something you want, tell people, make your intentions known, because people will help you. And my professor helped me. And so that's how I did that.
Thanks, Liz. There's another question in the chat from Sophia. She asked, does a cold or any other disease affect different to astronauts when they are in space?
So I mentioned that the immune system doesn't work as well in space. Fortunately, people don't tend to get sick in space because we're very careful when we launch new spaceships or when we return spaceships. We make sure they're very clean because we don't want people to get sick in space. So we clean the spaceship and we put people in quarantine before they go to space so that they don't get sick. In fact, we've never had, well, if you Google this, you'll see that somebody thought they had a cold in space, but technically we've never had anybody get sick, like a cold or a flu in space. So I don't really know the answer, Sophia. How would it look? How would it be? But I do know that we have sent bacteria and viruses to space, and the viruses and the bacteria get more capable of making you sick. So we've sent salmonella. Salmonella is a bacteria that you can find in some foods. It's why we cook meat. Salmonella can get a little nastier in space. How? Why? We don't know. So that's kind of interesting, but it might make us sicker in space if you get bacteria or a virus. So we don't want to find out, really.
Thank you, Liz. Now Francisca Diaz has a question.
Hi, Liz. I was wondering where you went to university and what exactly you studied, and also if there's anything you could tell us about the challenges that have already been encountered with the Artemis missions.
Yes. Okay, Francisca. So I grew up in California, and one of my very best friends who lived right down like 3 houses away from me, her name was Glenda, I'm trying to remember her last name, Droguet from Chile. That's why I mentioned her. And she and I went to space camp together. There was a camp that we went to all about space. And so, anyways, she's Chilean. But you asked me something totally different. You asked so I grew up in California, and I went to a university called University of California at Davis, just a different campus location. And I studied physiology. And like I said, physiology is the study of how the human body works and how the heart works with the lungs and how the lungs work with the kidneys and how the kidneys work with the brain, how it's an integrated system. That was interesting to me. And because I knew that the human body physiology has changed in space. And so that was interesting to me. Oh, Francisca, I've forgotten the second part of your question. Oh, Artemis and the challenges that we've already encountered. Wow. So we know, do you guys know how much gravity is on the moon? Less than Earth. It's about 1/6, 1/6 gravity on the moon. And you might see videos of astronauts walking on the moon, bouncing on the moon because there's less gravity. Our total time living on the moon is only a couple of days. And so we intend to go there to live permanently. We don't know what that's going to do to the human body. We don't know. So that's a big challenge right there. We don't know how to design spacesuits that are going to be resistant to moon dust. Moon dust is very, very fine, and it is very, very sharp. It is like the sharpest sand. And why is it sharp? There's no erosion on the moon. There's no wind, there's no water, there's none of the natural forces that wear down sharp edges. So spacesuits are gonna have to be pretty resilient to sharp moon dust. That's a challenge. We're going to have to bring all of our own food, water, oxygen. There's a lot of challenges. So we've already encountered a lot, and I'm sure we're going to encounter more that we have not yet thought of.
Thank you, Liz. There's Javier has raised his hand. Javier.
Hello, Liz. Thank you for your speech, really. And I have a question about the radiation. What is the state of art today in protecting humans in that sense? Because I know we're trying to go to Mars, but the radiation, it's like a really big problem. I understand that.
Javier, you hit on something that is very worrisome. The state of the art is not good. We are all exposed to radiation every day. It's just a part of life. It's very small. It's just a part of normal life. I'm behind. I need to go to the dentist and have my x-rays of my teeth to see if I have any cavities. You get a little extra radiation when you have an x-ray. There's different radiation in space, worse radiation. It's all about frequency and energy. The radiation that we see in space is very high energy. And some of it is particles of very heavy ions. And those very heavy ions are traveling very, very fast. And they go right through you. and that's okay. It doesn't hurt you. They're very small, but they might damage DNA. And that's the kicker. And we don't, well, when you go get an x-ray at the dentist, they put a lead blanket on you. I hope they do this to you. My dentist does. I get they put a lead, very heavy blanket on me. But that does not make sense. We could make a spacecraft out of lead, but not really. That doesn't make sense. So we don't have a good way of preventing radiation, especially deep space radiation. Our plans right now, Javier, if I were in charge, would be limit the amount of time in deep space when you are away from shielding. Even when we're on Mars, there's going to be a little bit of protection because it has a little bit of an atmosphere, but between Earth and Mars, nothing. So my idea is go fast. Don't spend a lot of time out in the high risk areas or risk, zones, I should say. So go fast. And we need better ideas for other mitigations. Nutrition can help. Some people think that using regolith, Martian dirt or lunar dirt as part of our habitat can help protect us, but oof, radiation is scary to me, Javier.
Thank you, Liz. Here in the chat, we have a question from Alejandro. It says, are spheres the ideal geometric form for all kinds of fluids in microgravity?
Yes, and I think it's because if you understand a little bit about surface tension and forces that water, for example, fluids, the bonds that are in fluids, they're loose, right? Water is a H2O, right? And it's very loose bonds. And those loose bonds are energetically optimized. I might be using words you don't know, but I hope you do, into a sphere, into a ball. And that's true of all fluids, I believe, even very viscous fluids. I'm going to put a video link in the chat. I have to look it up. Hang on. Of a very viscous fluid in space that you guys might enjoy watching. Hang on. Sorry, this is going to take me a second.
Okay, take your time.
In the meantime, I can, basically, I think that is true. I think all fluids, the most energetically simple or lowest energy form is a sphere.
Luca, on your go.
Sorry. Okay, I'm going to put the video here that you guys can watch later. I hope that answered your question.
I think it does.
Yeah, I think it did. There's the next question from Martin. It says, has the involvement of private companies into the space industry affected your job in any way?
Hey, Martin, yes, in a very good way. At first, a lot of people, including myself, were not really sure how private companies were going to be working with NASA, but it has turned out to be really good. And it goes back to what I was saying about a team. Teams are stronger and better with lots of diverse opinions and backgrounds and perspectives. This is true. There's no denying this. And private companies have their own ideas and their own perspectives, and they have improved spaceflight, and they've improved my job. So it's been good. It has been really good. And I'll tell you, the more countries that are involved, the more countries that have their own space programs, everything is better when we're doing it together.
Thank you. Isidora Alas now, please.
Yeah, maybe this doesn't concern you, like your area or thing like that, but have you considered, or the NASA like this, into have an internship for other countries? That I searched it and it was for like maybe 10 countries, but Chile wasn't one. So I would like to know if there's like a type of plan or something for include Chile.
Well, this is a very good question, Isadora, and we should include Chile. We should include all countries, I think. So if you cannot find what you're looking for with NASA, don't take no for an answer. Find a connection that you can use. And it may be another country's space agency at first. Like if you want to be involved right now and there's not an option for you at NASA, find another country that does have an option. I will tell you that, being at university right now is the best place you can be, because you are in an environment where you can meet other like-minded people and find maybe a professor with some research funding or some extra something. And if you were to propose an experiment, a CubeSat, for example, I bet that there are opportunities that you just don't quite know about yet. That maybe it's not an internship, but maybe you can still get involved somehow. And I know that there are small companies, private companies, that are options, and it may not lead directly to a job. It may not seem like that is a career path, but it's, find the next best thing. If you can't find an internship for a Chilean student at NASA, find another way, find another connection. And so don't be discouraged and think that there's no future. It's just find another way. Like right now, you are talking to someone who works at NASA. You didn't do that yesterday.
Thanks, Liz. Flavia, you have your hand raised up.
Yes, thank you. So, hi. Actually, I wanted to ask, because my field of study, I'm actually studying psychology. So I got really excited to see that it's actually like a field that a connection. There can be a connection. So I was wondering, because taking into consideration the importance, the essentiality of mental health, also during isolation, like, have there been or have they thought, mostly in these long trips, like for example, if we plan to go to Mars and it's gonna be a really long trip, so it's gonna be a lot of isolation. So to have psychologists or people prepared to actually give this kind of help to astronauts, but face to face, actually having psychologists prepared for that kind of help.
So yes, it's a concern of NASA's, because we know isolation has negative effects on people. And so even on the space station, which is only 250 miles away, it's pretty close, right? And only if they need to come home, they're only a few hours from getting home. There's concerns because they have people living there for 6 months or maybe a year. And we have tools which include meeting like this virtually with psychologists and counselors every other week, just to check in on them. We have computer tools to assess mental health and problem-solving ability, cognition, reasoning, risk-taking, reaction time, because we're aware that all of these things may suffer in spaceflight. So we have tools to assess, we have interventions with therapists, and we have training. Before going to space, astronauts are given a set of tools, and the tools include, how do you be more resilient? How are you going to understand yourself when you are in a hard situation? How well do you know yourself? And, you know, we're all part of our journey here on Earth and in space is learning about ourselves, right? And understanding how we react in situations. You know, you may be someone who is very conflict averse. You may be someone who loses their temper quickly. But you get training in how to work in a team. And the conflict averse person may have to be a little more willing to state things. And the person who loses their temper may have to learn to control their temper. So we all learn skills. This is true just if you have roommates, right? You have to learn how to live with other people. You have to understand yourself. So we train astronauts on these things. We give them the tools that we think they will need. And if they need more help along the way, we'll provide more help. But it remains a risk. And, you know, we don't know what it's going to be like when we go to Mars. And when you look out the window and you see Earth is only like a star, that's going to affect people, I think. Not like go crazy, but it's going to feel very far away. We don't know. So it's something to think about.
Thank you, Liz. Now we have Cristiani Nostroza.
Hi, Liz. I know you have pretty clear how fluids can affect our physical health, but I was wondering if you have linked already how brain chemicals can affect our mind because the flows.
Christian, you ask a good question I don't know the answer to. I don't know. I don't know how brain chemicals are changed in microgravity. And that may be because of fluid. I don't know. Good question. Sorry, I don't know the answer.
Thanks.
Liz, the next question is in the chat from Vicenta that says, what would you say to people that tell that NASA funds should be invested in global warming problems?
I get a lot of questions like that. I get, why are we spending money in space when we have a lot of problems here on Earth? And generally I answer that, well, no one's spending money in space, right? All the money stays here on Earth. It is jobs, it is things like that. We are studying the climate from space. NASA and space agencies have satellites that are studying the Earth and helping to understand climate change. We are also working on well, let me put it this way. Anytime we are investing in research to learn new things, it's worth my dollar, it's worth my money, because things that we learn today, we never know exactly how they will affect our lives. So when we first I'm not answering this very well. Basic research questions contribute to our lives every day. When J.J. Thomson, he was an American who first understood electrons, he first discovered Electrons move from areas of positive to negative direction. What does that mean? He didn't know what that meant, but today we're using electrons to speak to each other today. You're seeing me, I'm seeing you, I'm hearing you, you're hearing me, all through harnessing electrons. He had no idea that this is what his discovery was going to lead to. And of course, there was many years in between, but the money that we are spending exploring space is benefiting life on Earth, period. That was a long answer. I'm sorry.
Great. Thank you. And now we have the last question. We have 1 minute left for Ivan's question. So go ahead.
Okay. Next question is mine, but I don't like it. I prefer the other one. Have you implemented modern medical technology to improve a space travel's experience, or at least there are future projects of that?
Well, Ivan, is this how to say your name?
Yes, that's my name.
Can you say that question again? I'm not sure I got every bit of it.
Okay. Do you implemented modern medical technology to improve a space travel's experience?
I'm going to show you a really cool technology that is modern medicine. I have to show you against a black background, I think. It doesn't show up very good. Let's see, a white background maybe. Okay, do you know what this is? You probably do not. This is called a tissue chip. Is there anybody here studying biomedical engineering? Just raise your hand. Doesn't look like many people are studying biomedical engineering. Okay, there is a field of engineering that is attempting to model human physiology on microchips. This sounds absurd, I know. But this is actually this little microchip here. There's little channels, and instead of circuit boards, instead of solder and conduit and electricity, what flows in this chip is fluid and cells. And we're able to do this in a way that this chip, microchip, of course, I'm going to, sorry, I'm going long, but this microchip will mimic the behavior of a human lung, this particular chip. I know it sounds crazy and it sounds like I'm making this up, but it is true. And it can be used to study lung disease, like lung cancer or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or asthma or any other kinds of diseases of the lung. And we can study it in this little chip. We don't have to use animals. We don't have to use people. We can do all of the testing here. This is the, what's the word I'm looking for? This is cutting edge medical technology. And we're also sending them to space, to all those things I told you about, to study muscle loss, bone loss, immune dysfunction. Okay, there's not much problems with lungs, but we're sending these to space to understand diseases like osteoporosis. Where was I going with this? So yes, we're doing very cutting edge medical technology in space to benefit, yes, astronaut lives, but also to benefit lives here on Earth. So this is a very cool thing I'm very excited about. It's very new. You may not have heard about it yet, but it's tissue on chip. I'm going to put a link in the chat, if you'll bear with me a second, because I think you should learn about this. It's cool. Are there any other questions? I know, did I just blow your minds? I blew my mind.
I'm sorry, Liz, but that's all the time we've got for today.
Okay.
But thank you so very much for everything. It was such an interesting talk and so many interesting topics, and I think my mind was blown, totally blown. So thank you very, very much.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. And I put a couple of links in the chat there, so I hope they will be you'll learn something. I hope you learned something, and I hope most of all that you guys succeed in whatever you want to do.
Thank you. And now, before we forget, we sent you a link. You can check the chat for a quick survey, and we'd appreciate you take 2 minutes to answer. It's really important to value these kind of experiences so we can do it more often. Thank you again so much.
We are also happy to announce that we will give our university students a chance to be even closer to NASA and space exploration. With HAS Space School, we are planning on more exciting and exclusive talks with experts from the space industry. Stay tuned.
Thanks again, everybody, for participating in our second 2021 Coffee Break talk. We are very happy to have had such an amazing audience today. We are looking forward to seeing you soon. Please don't forget to complete our survey. Thank you again. Goodbye.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
It was awesome.
It's nice to meet you.
Bye, Liz.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Liz. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
No,
Really?
no.
Bye, Liz. Thank you.